arrived. Good morning, all of you. Our chief guest has arrived. Warm welcome to Honorable VC, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Shaista.
Yes, sir. Now we are starting our session.
Yeah.
We all are going live within 2 seconds. Suswagatam, Suswagatam, Suswagatam. With blessings of Almighty, Honorable Bade Sir, Bade Ma'am, I, Dr. Shaista Inamdar, coordinator of this virtual lecture series, welcome you all on behalf of Navjivan Education Society's Navjivan Law College for the inaugural function. We are truly blessed with your presence. Besides, I am extremely privileged to welcome Professor Dr. Dilip S. Uke Sir as our chief guest of the function. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to this magnificently glorious day, the galaxy of intellectuals, honorable guests, benevolent teachers, and beloved students. As you all know that in this pandemic situation, we are facing since 8 to 10 months. In the beginning, it was visualized as if whole education system will collapse. But due to this digital era, we all got connected through virtual platform. Navjivan Law College is here today with virtual lecture series on varied subjects of law and in different phases, not limiting itself to the territories, but globally. Navjivan Law College was established in 1999 as a second law college in Nasik city, Maharashtra, India. We are imparting 3 years, 5 years, and 2 diploma courses. Our mission is to offer to society makers and upholders of law, instilling into them virtues of integrity, loyalty, and social values. Vision: to provide quality legal education to meet the global challenges and to enhance the standard of legal education, along with creating legal awareness in society and increasing the participation of people, particularly of rural and economical disadvantaged section. Thus, we are here with phase 1, and the subject for the first phase is professional ethics and contempt of court law. In coming days, we will be organizing different lecture series on various other subjects of law like human rights, intellectual property rights law, criminal law, cyber law, arbitration laws, family laws, etc. Now, I request our principal, Dr. K.K. Dev, for his welcome address.
Good morning to one and all. Myself, Dr. Kundendra Kumar Dev. I welcome today's chief guest, Professor Dr. Dilip Uke Sir, the Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai. Sir, it gives me immense pleasure that you have accepted our invitation to be the chief guest of this occasion. We feel very proud that a personality like you have given boost to this virtual lecturerships. I also welcome our Honorable Bade Sir, Subhash Deshmukh, Managing Trustee, Navjivan Education Society, who is the pattern who has initiated to do or go on with this virtual lectureship. I welcome our guest of honor, Honorable Bade Madam Vijay Deshmukh, who has also accepted our invitation and have been a part of this virtual lectureship. I welcome all my faculty members, the 2 coordinators who have initiative to take this lecturership to the top level of this subject. I welcome all the participants who are present here on this virtual class. I would say this virtual class, I would refer to the Puranas, where there is a term you must be knowing, that Indrajal means in those days the persons of Maharishis used to utter a mantra and call for a person to give all his details, to give the message. The same thing has been adopted during this COVID system. That is, the technology and science has developed to such an extent that in the modern era, we are virtualing such type of things also. So, even though COVID has put us into certain hurdles, still the science and technology has made us to reach each and every one. So with these few words, as it is high time and we have started a little bit late, I would conclude my welcome speech. And again, once again, I welcome each and every person who are present on this virtual class. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request Honorable Bade sir and Bade ma'am, as they are not present here, but they have sent a message in a recorded form. So I request to on the recordings, please.
Distinguished Chief Guest, Dr. OK, who is the Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Bombay, I should say Mumbai, Principal of this college, Navajivan College, Dr. Dev and his colleagues, and my law lover spectators and participants for this lecture series arranged by Savitribai Phule Pune University in Navajivan Law College. I welcome all of you as the chief of Navajivan, this institute, that is Navajivan Education Society. Before 4 decades, this institute was started. Our main intention while starting this institute was to impart quality education to the common man of India. And we have been partially successful in doing this. Right from KG to PG, our wings have spread. Our MBA Institute, this Navajivan Law College, and many other schools are doing this job in a very nice way. We have also established a rural development foundation, that is Navajivan World Peace and Research Foundation, to serve the cause of humanity, to serve the poor people in the village area. That work is also going on successfully. In doing all these things, we have kept one thing in our mind, in front of our mind, I should say, to spread goodness and greatness. And that exactly is the main topic of this series, to spread the goodness and greatness in the society. How advocates should be, how the lawful attitude will be imbibed in all men and women of the society. I remember Confucius has said, virtue can be utilized for the cultivation of goodness and greatness. Yes, I do agree, virtuous people are there. But are they lawful? Are they determinate? Are they humble? Do they follow all the rules and regulations of the society? I am afraid many good persons, we can see that they have gone on a wrong path. In fact, this is what is the subject of this lecture series, and that too arranged in this pandemic. We are away from each other, but then also we can think alike, we can contemplate alike, and that's what is the intention of this lecture series. I really congratulate all the persons who have done efforts to make this series successful. Many of you must have used this pandemic era for increasing goodness and greatness. We are alone, but definitely not lonely. I feel that most of the time I used for reading the classics, great books, good books, thinking, and many of you are doing the same thing. How many days to complain about the same COVID and about the same deadlock or unlock, we can say. Many of our professors I saw that they are sincerely working, attending different exams, attending different seminars. Recently, one of our faculty member, Miss Shalini Pekre or Ghumre, she was selected for RD parade, Republic Day parade, and she will lead the team of Maharashtra state. It's really our honor. In this way, our all persons are taking good efforts. I welcome the guests from Rajasthan and from other states who are going to express their precious thought in this seminar. The subject of this seminar is about the behavior, about the general attitude of the advocates, how they should be, how they should respect each other, how they should respect the judges, how they should not feel themselves to be called as to they have done any contact on the court, this and that. In this regard, first I would like to just little away from this subject, always shun one line or two words, I should say. They say that every man has his price. I think it's a very horrible sentence. And secondly, no lunch is free. What is this? What type of society we are going to create if at all every lunch has some intention? Every man is to be sold. Then where does morality stand? Where does hopefulness stand? Where does contemplation stand? Where does good thought stand? Are we forgetting Abraham Lincoln? Are we forgetting Mahatma Gandhi? Are we forgetting Edmund Burke? Are we forgetting Dr. Chagla? Are we forgetting Nani Palkhiwala? And so many best persons who were attorneys, who were advocates, who were lovers of the laws. I remember Mahatma Gandhi's one incident that in South Africa he was discussing his case in front of the judge, and suddenly Mr. Gandhi, he was not Mahatma then, he came to know that his client is lying. At that moment he stopped. He asked an apology to Honorable Judge and asked his permission to see him in chamber personally. And it was done later on. Gandhiji said, "I am very sorry, I was not knowing the real state of my client." And he asked the judge to forgive him or do whatever he wished to do. Even the judge was impressed by his love for truth. Gandhiji was truthful. His client was given 1 month imprisonment and matter was solved. But please remember, my dears, after coming from jail, the client came to Gandhiji and said, "I am very sorry, sir. You are really great. You changed my life." And later on, he became one of the soldiers in the fight to spread goodness and greatness. This is what is the power of truthfulness. I remember Godfather novel by Maria Puzo. In that novel, he says, "I shall put such an offer, he cannot say no, he cannot refuse." Means he was also sure that men are having their price. Marlon Brando, the greatest of the American, we can say, actor, done very great role in that novel, and he got Oscar award also. Sorry to get diverted. But the thing is that, again, the same thing. Are we forgetting the goodness? Are we forgetting the morality? Are we forgetting the decency? Are we forgetting the righteousness? No, never. We shall always maintain goodness and greatness in the society. What for we stand? What for you stand? What for our nation stand? Our nation has a very beautiful sentence as our emblem, not directly but indirectly, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This whole world is a family, and in family no one cheats himself, no one cheats others, because all are brothers and sisters. Eminent guests have come. They will put light on this subject more deeply.
Pandey sir, I request you to introduce our chief guest.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good afternoon, all of you. I am Makarand Pandey, Assistant Professor, Navjivan Law College. Welcome you all in this inaugural function of virtual lecture series. It is really a privilege and proud moment for me to introduce today's chief guest, Honorable Professor Dr. Dilip Uke sir, Vice Chancellor, Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai. Professor Dr. Dilip Uke sir is presently working as a Vice Chancellor of MNLU, Mumbai from 2019. He has done his LLB from Nagpur University in first class. He stood second in merit in LLM, that is master's degree. He was awarded Junior Research Fellowship for PhD from UGC New Delhi and awarded a PhD in the year 2000 from Nagpur University. In the year 2003, he was appointed as a professor in Department of Law, Savitribai Phule Pune University, and worked as head of the department, Savitribai Phule Pune University Law Department from 2004 to 2009. He was appointed as a Pro Vice Chancellor, SRTM, University Nanded, on 21st of March 2011 and continued up to 11th of May 2013. Meanwhile, he also worked as acting Vice Chancellor of SRTM University for about 6 months. He was recognized with various awards which includes awarded Shiksha Ratna Puraskar by India International Friendship Society, New Delhi in 2007. He was invited to deliver keynote address at international conference held on human rights at Kathmandu, Nepal. In 2009, he was invited to present paper in an international conference held on human rights at New South Wales University, Sydney, Australia. In 2009, he was awarded Best Citizen of India Award by Citizen Group of Publications, New Delhi. He was appointed as Visiting Research Fellow by New South Wales University, Sydney, Australia for 3 years. He was also invited to be a guest speaker and person. He has also presented a paper in international conference jointly organized by Vienna University, Australia and City University, Hong Kong. He was shortlisted for interview for the post of Vice Chancellor, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, and also Savitribai Phule University. He was awarded Best Academician Law Award conferred by Indian National Bar Association, New Delhi on 26th of November 2019. He has also completed various research projects, including Child Development and Rights, a socio-legal study in 2008, Right to Information Act and its impact on BCUD, Pune University. The 27 research papers are published. Then he has published 2 books, including Jurisprudence, Legal Theory, and Law of Constitution. He was attended various seminars, conferences, workshops, national and international level, and he has conducted around 61 training programs. Then national and international organizations, he is having nominations and memberships. He has delivered around 53 lectures. Then around 12 persons are awarded PhD under his guidance and 6 are now pursuing. He served on national bodies like UGC, NAC, UPSC, State Public Service Commission of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Orissa, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, etc. Recently, he has conducted various training sessions for judges from Bangladesh and Fiji at a National Judicial Academy, Bhopal. He served as a member of Senate, Board of Studies, Academic Council, Executive Council in various state and national universities, and he is also nominated as a member UGC MSRD panel of institutions of eminence. So, we are really very fortunate to have a legendary academician, Dr. Ukesar, as a chief guest of this function. Now, I request Honorable Dr. Ukesar to guide us with his word of wisdom. Over to you, sir. Ukesar?
We are eagerly waiting for our chief guest, VC sir. Yes.
Yes. Rather, I was eagerly waiting.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Subhajit Deshmukh, Managing Trustee of Navjivan Education Society, and Mrs. Deshmukh, the Principal of Law College, Navjivan Law College, Nasik, Dr. Dev, Dr. Shahista Inamdar, Mr. Makarand Pandey, all other faculty members, staff, and dear participants. It gives me an immense pleasure to interact with you and to be with you on this occasion of inaugural function of virtual lecture series being organized by Navjivan Law College, Nasik. I congratulate Dr. Dev, Dr. Shahista for taking such a novel initiative to organize a lecture series. Why? Because it is not one area, but rather the varied interests which are more relevant, be it professional ethics, or be it arbitration, or be it RPI, IPR, or human rights, or I think, I do not know whether I could see even constitution, which was there as one of the area. Wherein in this pandemic, when it is not possible to organize physically either the programs or the classes, this period has taught us to come closer virtually. Of course, this is an advantage of technology, that while sitting anywhere, not in the state, not in India, anywhere around the world, you can interact, you can talk to each other, you can see. And in that sense, it has given this advantage, and we have learned this rather all to get connected through virtually. So on one hand, this is an advantage that in spite of being at our respective places, we can get connected, can conduct lectures, examination, and so on and so forth, see even meetings. However, it has its own disadvantage also, and the biggest disadvantage is that if otherwise, today I could have been at the Navjivan Law College in Nasik physically there, and it would have been a great pleasure to meet all of you personally, interact with you personally, spend quality time with all of you personally. That gives more joy, happiness, and satisfaction, which technology doesn't. In technology, we can just see each other, we can speak to each other, but that feeling of oneness, feeling of that closeness, it doesn't come through the technology. So that is the other side, that is a disadvantage. Nevertheless, because of the situation, this is the only mode which is available and possible in this period. Dear friends, it being an inaugural session, I do not wish to go in at length of all the topics or any of the specific topic as such. However, since professional ethics is one, IPR is another one, human rights is the third one, or constitution and arbitration, so on and so forth. Legal education in a contemporary period now, it has crossed its own journey, own distance. When rather Navjivan Law College was founded in the year 1991, I still recall the first visit to Navjivan Education Society and time spent there with Mr. Subhash Deshmukh and all the then staff, teaching as well as non-teaching. And then I still remember the motto, "Sky is the limit," of Navjivan Education Society, Navjivan Law College. Rather, the society has traveled miles away since then, and Navjivan Law College also crossed so much a distance since 1999, now 21 years, more than two decades. So I would say that though sky is the limit is the motto, rather that is to be amended and maybe reframed. Even sky is not the limit. So you can expand your horizons, and this is the one way. This is the one facet that Navjivan, new life. It has given a new life to all. However, the situation is such we need to take certain urgent measures, arrest the situation, and remedial things like virtual classes and virtual programs have become imperative and necessity as such. As Dr. Shaista has pointed out that Law College not only imparts the education, or for that matter any of the center of higher learning, not only imparts the education, I believe that along with that, it imparts and inculcates certain basic human values. It is not only the information which we pass on. It is not just a degree which we award to them, we in the sense university, through the college. But rather, Every center of higher learning is the center of making of human society, making of nation building. It is not the profit making like all other ventures, but rather it builds the society, it builds the human being, it builds the character of human being, it builds the personalities and organize their life in a satisfactory manner, try to. From this perspective, the role which is being played by the Navjivan Law College is commendable. I again compliment and congratulate all for this nation building venture and efforts being done, carried out by all of you. It's my great pleasure, as I said, since we talk about professional ethics or profession, legal profession, as I said, that legal education has crossed its own distance. Earlier, only litigating practice either or judiciary or the academic, only those three things were available. However, now, areas like arbitration, areas like mediation, areas like maritime, areas like air, space, health, and whatnot, law and legal education is touching upon every field, including the construction site, consumer, whatnot. It's every aspect of life, every facet of life is being covered by the law and thereby the legal education. As the opportunities are being thrown, even the challenges are being thrown. We need to encash upon those opportunities and we need to learn to overcome those challenges. Both, like this, one challenge is this, what to do in pandemic. Maybe after a few years, rather a few days before, I read a news that there may be now even virtual courtrooms. Supreme Court is coming out with that. No need, if somebody wants to approach from Pondicherry or Kanyakumari to Supreme Court, no need to go all the way there. Even a lawyer can argue. And that's what rather. It is throwing up the new opportunities as well as, of course, posing certain challenges. So that's what I say, that we need to encash upon those opportunities and we need to learn to overcome those challenges. When we impart the legal education, what do we do in impart? Do we pass on the information or do we inculcate the knowledge, impart the knowledge? No doubt, all of us would agree that we try to provide them the knowledge, legal knowledge. Education is a double-edged sword. One side is sharpened, other side is not, maybe. For that, what is needed is to inculcate the values, basic human values, ethical values, and that's what rather the professional ethics is meant for. That being in the profession, when I say profession, it is not only the litigating practice, even the corporate practice, even the judiciary. I would look at professional ethics in a broader sense, broader way, including even academic. Professional ethics are not meant only for the advocates. They are meant for everybody, every profession. Be it a litigating lawyer, be it a corporate lawyer, be it a law officer or legal officer in any sector, including banks or judiciary or the academic. Whosoever is the lawyer, not an advocate, whosoever is the lawyer has to adhere to those ethics. Of course, paper is there, prescribed by the Bar Council of India. However, it is a matter of concern that those ethics are to be abided by, adhered to by every professional. When you talk about all other areas, see even IPR, intellectual property rights. Where do we stand today? Because rather, as it is predicted, maybe after a few years, some years after, India might become a number 3 in terms of the economy around the globe, in the world. Knowledge is the powerhouse. Knowledge is the asset. Intellectual is the asset. Intellectual is the property. And that's why we shall pose ourselves as a nation, as a society, as institutions to overcome those challenges and encash those opportunities, because the record in IPR of India is not that satisfactory, is not that so welcome one. There are several such things. Of course, when experts would conduct the lectures, they would dwell upon this. Our patenting system, laws, rules, regulations, and the research even. What we need today is not the research. What we need is the innovation. You won't get anything patented only out of your research. One can get patented or patent by way of innovation. Where are those innovations? And that's why we shall pose ourselves, because as I said that, and all of us know well that it is the real asset. Intellectual is the real asset. We must generate the asset out of our intellectuals, out of our innovations, innovative practices. Of course, legal regime is there. Moreover, the world trade has undergone a change, particularly after GATT and WTO. Now, again, I would say that the experts would deal with this all. Section 3 of the IP Act, which has been amended. Now, are these all of us are aware? I do not wish to make a comment. This pandemic has posed the challenge, not only challenge, even a threat to the whole world. How intellectual property could rights or laws or legal regimes at national or international level could help the whole world, not only particular society, not only particular state. How it would take this humanity today, biggest challenge before the whole world is the survival. It is not my right, it is not your right, it is not your interest, it is not my interest. But rather, it is the survival of everybody. Everybody. Pandemic doesn't know the caste, creed, religion, region, hierarchy, nothing. That's why what it knows is only one thing. And that's why we need to learn how we can come out of it, how we can overcome about this. One need to think of. Because the varied areas like human rights and constitution, I would like to throw some light upon these two. Today is 29th, just on 10th of December, celebrated International Human Rights Day, because it was 10th of December when United Nations General Assembly adopted Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the year 1948. Of course, it was not the only or the first document of human rights containing. It was in 1215 when King John of England issued the document which was known as Magna Carta, rather which was labeled as Magna Charta. It was a charter of certain rights, provided certain privileges to barons, which was amended subsequently in 1216, 1217 and 1625 as well. And therein in Great Britain, then Bill of Rights 1689, then French Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizens 1789. Bill of Rights of United States or Virginia Declaration of Independence in United States. But before that, the Second World War, which shook the conscience of the whole world, that damage, not only the damage, that destruction, the whole earth, not only the world, whole earth was in danger when Hiroshima and Nagasaki occurred in Japan. And that's why it was decided that all nations shall come together, join hands together to save humanity first. Then only the question of human rights would come. And therefore, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, and then, of course, President of then US, Mr. Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. The first document which came out was in the form of 4 freedoms: freedom from hunger, freedom from torture. Those 2 were the prominent amongst them, and that resulted in establishment of the United Nations in the year 1945. If one looks at the Charter of United Nations Charter, one would realize that, particularly its preamble, human rights are the standards, common standards of achievement. Human rights are the common standards of achievement and respect the human dignity, equality, as well as Article 1 of United Nations Charter contains the same and few rights. Article 1 as well as Article 56, 57 and 68 of the United Nations Charter that deal with human rights. However, it was realized that they are limited one. Basic aim of the United Nations Charter was to establish the United Nations and its organs like General Assembly, Security Council, ECOSOC, so on and so forth. And that's why need was felt to codify those rights. And thereafter, the committee was constituted, and ultimately United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in the year 1948 on 10th of December. That's why we celebrate every year 10th of December as International Human Rights Day. Even the preamble of United Nations UDHR says that all persons are born free and equal. Equality is the basis of human rights. As well as Article 1 also says the more or less same thing, whatever is contained in the preamble of UDHR. However, in United UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is universal, those rights are universal. But however, that has been addressed to individuals, not to the states. And that's why it is not binding. It was merely a recommendatory, declaratory. That's why it is a declaration. Declaration of Human Rights. Article 2 to Article 21, which deal with civil and political rights. And Article 22 to Article 30, they deal with economic, social, and cultural rights. Nevertheless, as I said that since UDHR as a document is merely recommendatory in nature, not binding one, that's why it was not compulsory on the part of the state to abide by that. Moreover, certain rights were to be added, modified, and that's why ultimately committee was constituted, and subsequently, rather precisely on 16th of December 1966, 2 covenants, Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, they were adopted by the United Nations. So as we celebrate 10th of December, you may celebrate even 16th of December also. Because those 2 covenants, signatory states, sovereign states, it becomes obligation of those sovereign states to abide by those rights. Rather, otherwise, human rights are meant as what? Human rights are nothing but the conditions which are essential, necessary to live the life of a human being like a human being. Why those rights are needed? Why those rights are required? Those rights are required. Why? Because we need to lead our life as a human being with certain human dignity. Just imagine that all rights are withdrawn. You don't have a right to speech and expression, or don't have a right to movement. What will happen? That's why rights are nothing but the conditions which are essential to live the life like a human being with certain human dignity. As all of us know, that when Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in the year 1948, which has contained both two sets of civil and political rights as well as economic, social and cultural rights. At the same time, the Indian Constitution was being made. Indian Constitution was being drafted. Obviously, the Indian Constitution was influenced by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the development which were taking place at that juncture at international level. And in that way, those set of rights in the form of civil and political rights came to be incorporated under Indian Constitution in Part 3 in the form of fundamental rights. Part 3 of the Indian Constitution is nothing but the set of civil and political rights provided under the Indian Constitution as a human rights. However, rights are not only available in Part 3 in the form of fundamental rights, rights are also available in Part 4 in the form of economic, social and cultural rights. Those rights came to be incorporated in the form of directive principles of state policy. No doubt, those rights are not enforceable in a way that directive principles were not enforceable by the court of law. However, by way of judicial creativity, by way of judicial activism, those rights were enforced. Those economic, social and cultural rights, they were enforced. Rather, civil and political rights, they were branded as first generation rights. Economic, social and cultural rights were branded as second generation rights. And of course, there are third generation rights. Maybe now fourth generation rights. I do not wish to go at length. That is the task left to the experts when they deliver their lectures. Our dear friends, as I said, that Indian Constitution was influenced by the adoption of Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the whole gamut of human rights at international level then, including the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which were adopted in the year 1966. It was only in the year 1993-94, in 93, ordinance was issued, and in 1994, the Protection of Human Rights Act came to be enacted by the Indian Parliament. Two things are here. Does that mean till then we did not have human rights? Answer is obvious. Yes, we did have, in the form of fundamental rights, in the form of directive principles. Like, say, right to wages, which was elevated from directive principle, which was elevated in the form of right to life in Asian workers' case. People's Union for Democratic Rights versus Union of India. Right to receive wages was elevated as a fundamental right under Article 21. Justice Bhagwati, P.N. Bhagwati then said that if minimum wages are not paid, how that right to life would be. Right to life doesn't mean to live the life like an animal, but to live the life with certain human dignity. And that's why either right to receive wages or education, Mohin Vijay and Unni Krishnan, or right to free education. Of course, 21A came to be added only by way of 86th Constitutional Amendment Act. And in that sense, I would say that Indian Constitution is also the Charter of Human Rights. And it is not only Charter of Human Rights, it is a Charter of Social Transformation. Protection of Human Rights Act enacted by the Parliament in the year 1994 sought to set up, establish National Human Rights Commission, State Human Rights Commission, as it was done so, providing the mechanism for enforcement of human rights. But it was not only the Act, it was not only the Part 3 or Part 4, rather the judiciary has contributed in the domain of, in the gamut of human rights, as we are referred to Asian workers case as one instance of elevating, recognizing right to receive wages as one basic human rights or a fundamental right. There are several other such occasions. One I would like to mention at this juncture is Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan, decided by the Supreme Court in the year 1997. Wherein the freedom from sexual harassment at workplace was held to be a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. As we know, as lawyers, as law students, we know India follows dualism. Unless there is a municipal legislation, international law cannot be enforced. In the judgment, it was the first time in the history of the independent Supreme Court. In the judgment itself, three novel things have occurred. Firstly, Supreme Court has invoked CEDAW, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, an international document. Having invoked that without having a municipal legislation. Secondly, it laid down 12 guidelines in its judgment. And thirdly, declared those guidelines as law, as mandatory to be abided by, to be followed by, till the time Parliament enacts a suitable legislation with this effect. Of course, no doubt, the Supreme Court has invoked Article 142 of the Constitution. It says that Supreme Court can pass any order in a matter pending before it to do the complete justice. Notion of justice, notion of gender justice. I will come back to the notion of justice half a minute later. I won't take much of the time. I know that it is already delayed us. However, as we know, the Parliament could not find suitable time to enact the suitable legislation for 16 years, from 1997 till 2013, when the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act was enacted by the Parliament. In that sense, judiciary's contribution, particularly highest court's contribution, Supreme Court's contribution, and High Court's contribution in the domain of, in the realm of human rights, is really a commendable one, noteworthy one. Dear friends, now in this lecture series, we will have different versions of areas, varied areas. However, as I said that I will restrict myself without going in details. We talk about these 2-3 things, either right to receive wages, or the right to work, or education, or freedom from sexual harassment, so on and so forth. Is it not that all of us, including myself, we crave for our own rights? We are obsessed with our own rights. Firstly, let us look at the preamble of the Indian Constitution, what it says. We read every year on 26th November, read out preamble of the Indian Constitution in all government institutions or education institutions. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to its citizens justice, social, economic, political, liberty of thought, expression, faith, belief, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and promoting amongst them all fraternity and assuring the dignity of individuals and unity and integrity of the nation. In this Constituent Assembly on 26th day of November 1949, we do hereby adopt, enact, and give this Constitution to ourselves. That is what the preamble of the Constitution is. We just read. Moreover, the error, if at all, we commit or ignore, that always we emphasize upon only three things: justice, liberty, and equality. Justice, social, economic, political, liberty, and equality of status and opportunity. That's all. If anybody asks me, what is the soul? Of course, that question was posed to the chairman of drafting committee, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He answered that if anything is the soul, it is Article 32 of the Constitution, which is the soul of the Constitution. Absolutely true. No denial. However, there could be two souls. And if at all there are two souls, to my mind, notion of fraternity ingrained in the preamble of the Indian Constitution, as well as assuring the dignity of individuals, is another soul of the Indian Constitution. What do you understand as fraternity? As we know, fraternity is nothing but the common brotherhood. And assuring the dignity, is it the duty of only the state to follow fraternity? Is it only the duty of the state to assure the dignity of individuals? When I'm talking about duty, as we know that fundamental duties, chapter 4A came to be added by virtue of 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in the Constitution. As fundamental rights are fundamental, directive principles of the state policy are also fundamental in the governance of the country. And subsequently, by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, those duties came to be incorporated, are also fundamental. We do ignore, neglect, forget those duties. I call upon all of you, including myself, to at least have a glance of the fifth one, E, small a, b, c, d, E. What E says, 51A E says, rather, I would like to read out for your benefit. Recall the preamble. Promoting amongst them all the fraternity and assuring the dignity of individuals. If liberty, equality, justice are the concepts, or is the philosophy of the Constitution, or fraternity is the philosophy or principle of the Constitution. Fraternity is nothing but the common brotherhood. Now look at 51A E small. I read out. 51A small e, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities. Of course, to renounce the practices derogatory to the dignity of women. That is what the 51A is. Now go back to the preamble. Promoting amongst them all fraternity and assuring the dignity of individuals, including women. They are also individuals. What do we do? What happens? What is the naked, harsh reality exists in this society? We take pride of a culture. We feel proud of a culture. Indian culture, Indian ethos, Indian values. Where are those basic human values? Respect to womanhood. That common brotherhood. Where is that brotherhood? That's why. What is imperative? Did we learn anything from this pandemic? Answer is very harsh. No. Our egos, our aggression, our jealousies, our hatred, our ill wills, our violence, our violations, they are intact. And that's why. Unless we eliminate those enemies within us, enemies like jealousy, enemies like hatred, enemies like ill will, enemies like egos, angers, violence, violations, so on and so forth. The kind of philosophy in the form of fraternity which was there, kind of philosophy or principle in the form of assuring the dignity which was there, has been made a duty which is fundamental. We do not know, we forget. It no longer remains the philosophy, it no longer remains the concept, it no longer remains the principle. It becomes a duty. Rather, I would say it is our constitutional dharma. It is basic human dharma, manav dharma. Dharma is herein not a religion. And that's why. All of us shall be enlightened about this. It is not the knowledge. Rather, value-based knowledge. What is important is and what is required is value-based. Knowledge is always coupled with, has to be always coupled with certain basic human values. Unless that happens, we will fail in our duty to build the society. We will fail in a duty to build the nation. We fail in our duty to build the personalities of our students as well as colleagues, as well as this great nation. Are we really fit to call ourselves liberal, civilized society? Are we really civilized? Is there a civility? And that's why when we read the preamble, when we read the constitution, or when we read any law, when we discuss any law, when we teach any law, be it professional ethics, be it human rights, be it arbitration, be it IPR, or any, first and foremost, what is imperative is that to impress upon that first and foremost we are human beings. And being a human being, we have to have the values of human being and humanity. Then only my life, then only our life, then only social life, then only nation's life would be a better one, advantageous one, glorious one. There will be unless there is a peace, there would not be a prosperity. As Amartya Sen said so, a noted economist, Nobel laureate, produced by India. We have to have the idea of justice. One may read his book titled Idea of Justice. And that's why as said, the opportunities provided by this pandemic and challenges thrown by this pandemic, we need to encash the opportunities and we need to learn to overcome those challenges. But unfortunately, even after 9-10 months, that is not visible. I hope at least sometime, someday, one day, you being Navjeevan, try to infuse the new life amongst all. And for this endeavor, for this attempt, I wish you all the good luck, all the best luck to you as well as all the participants. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for Navjeevan Law College. That Honorable VC, sir, we got the guidance from him. Dear beloved students, he is Guru of all your Gurus. Yes. So now I request Rahul Pawar for vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Yes,
Audible,
Rahul?
sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're audible.
I wish a very good afternoon to the Honorable Chief Guest, respected Managing Trustee, Chairman, beloved Principal, event coordinators, teachers, and my dear fellow students. I, Rahul Pawar, student of LLB second year of Navjeevan Law College, regard this as an honor and privilege to extend word of thanks on this occasion. Once a great man said, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. Today, I take this opportunity to put all my gratitude in the form of vote. On behalf of Navjeevan Education Society and all the students, I would like to thank our chief guest, Professor Dr. Dilip S. Koke sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, MNLU Mumbai, for taking his precious time out and consenting to be our chief guest for today's inaugural session. Sir, indeed, your insight and wisdom have inspired the students. Sir, your merits and accolades speaks volume for yourself, sir. And we are hereby humbled and inspired to drive our motivation in the endeavor of achieving the milestones which you have already achieved. Sir, your presence, especially in Southeast Asia and also in the Oceania region, as a research fellow and as a guest lecturer, is duly noted. Sir, I was very heartily touched when you had offered us regarding the importance of our law degree regarding dissemination of information for not only merely earning profits, but also in the nation building process and also for humanity in totality, which again nurtures our young inspiring minds as becoming future brothers. So I am also humbly touched by how we should try to understand what is the importance of our human rights and civil rights. You took us through the entire history of the implementation of human rights right from the 10th century of England, while forming Magna Carta, right to our framing of our Indian Constitution, and also trying to help us in understanding how our preamble and our Indian Constitution assures civil and human rights to our citizens. And as you have rightfully said, sir, like there are two souls of our Indian Constitution, that's Article 32 on Article 226, wherein any citizen of India can approach the Indian judiciary to assure his civil and human rights. I thank our respected Bade Sir and Bade Madam who have graced us with their eminent presence and guidance. Thank you, Sir and Madam, for sharing with us your words of wisdom. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by our beloved principal, Dr. Kundendi Devkar. You've been a constant support and encouragement for students to receive knowledge even in this COVID-19 pandemic situation. I thank our event coordinators, Professor Madam Pandey Sir and Dr. Jaisna Inamdar Madam for organizing today's inaugural function and always encouraging and helping us to carry out virtual lecture series and giving us exposure to vital insights and knowledge. I extend my sincere thanks to the teachers and non-teaching staff of Navjivan Law College for the blessings, support, and helping us to gain knowledge in this COVID-19 pandemic. I thank all the volunteers without whose helping hand this event wouldn't have been a grand success. Last but not least, I thank all the participants for showing the interest in the program. I once again thank everyone for making this inaugural session of our virtual lecture series successful. Goodbye for now and stay tuned for some valuable insights and next session of our virtual lecture series featuring tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all for tomorrow.
Thanks to all of you. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Uke sir.
Nice to see you on screen.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your participation and giving enlightened speech.
Thank you.